Looking to the future gets interesting when you're doing a bank reconciliation. You can actually set up future dated EFTs. Did you know that? When you set up an internet payment to somebody else, it's quite possible to set up a date that is not today, that's sometime in the future. Maybe for a recurring payment to go off on the first of every single month, or maybe just something that you know you only want to pay them at some stage in the future. In the same way, other people can set up future dated payments for you. How are we going to deal with these? Well, if we make a future dated payment, or a future dated internet transfer, EFT. EFT, of course, stands for electronic funds transfer, which is the same thing. When we set it up, we are very likely to record it because that is when we are thinking about it, and otherwise we might not remember to record it at a later stage. Of course, if we don't remember, then we can just pick it up off the bank statement and record it from there. But it is very possible that we might record it when we set it up. Obviously, if we've set it up and it's for some time in the future, when the bank statement arrives, of course, we won't see the payment having gone off yet. That means that when we do a bank reconciliation, if we had recorded it, we would simply need to show it as an outstanding payment in the reconciliation statement. When we might receive a future dated receipt from a customer, however, what you actually need to do is ignore it completely. In reality, it's far too easy to change a future dated payment that you have set up. All you do is you go into your internet account and you delete it, or change the amount or change the date. It's very, very easy to manage those payments. So if somebody sends you a proof of payment showing that they are going to pay you sometime in the future, well, unless you really trust them very much, it's pointless actually accepting that as proof of payment. It makes much more sense to record it only when you actually receive it, either from maybe perhaps making a note for yourself of that's when it's supposed to go off, but even that I wouldn't really trust. It might make more sense to do it on the bank's, when you see it on the bank statement, or if somebody actually sends you a proof of payment after it has actually gone off. If, however, you receive a proof of payment from a customer and you don't bother to check the date, which is very possible, you don't expect people to send you a proof of payment of some date in the future, then it is very possible that you might record it by accident. In that case, all you do is when you do check your bank statement and you see that it hasn't cropped up, then you can just cancel it in your cash payments journal as always. In your exercises, you might sometimes see that they will talk about checks. And checks are basically old-fashioned EFTs where you actually had to use a piece of paper because the internet hadn't been invented yet. So instead of going online and telling your bank to make a payment, you wrote it out on a piece of paper and gave it to somebody who would then take it to the bank and the bank would give them the money. So sometimes in your exercises, you will see future dated check payments or future dated checks received, and they work in exactly the same way. Keep in mind, though, that as of the 25th of January 2021, checks are no longer usable by banks in South Africa. The law still allows for it, but all the South African banks have now stopped issuing and cashing checks. Let's have a look at this example. The following payments have not yet been processed by the bank. A proof of payment received from C. Chikumbu for 4,000 Rand dated the 31st of March. Now, if we're sitting on the end of February, that means that even though she's sending us a proof of payment, it's not actually a real payment because it hasn't happened yet. She's just planning to pay us in a month's time. Now, that shouldn't actually have been recorded in our accounting records, and so we'll need to cancel it. So in the cash payments journal, you will simply enter a cancellation transaction, a transaction that just offsets the receipts that we shouldn't have actually entered. Let's have a look at the second one. A. Fredericks told the business he had paid, but he forgot to finalize his payment for 2,100 Rand. That is so easy to do. As you're busy processing an internet transfer, there's a lot of screens that you have to go through where you enter all the information and then you review and then you enter the one-time password and then you've got to actually confirm and blah, blah, blah. And it's very easy to sometimes forget that final step. So you think you've paid it, but you haven't. And that's what happened in this case. And probably he was a good customer who we trusted. And so we might have recorded it from his word rather than from a piece of paper. But obviously, if he forgot to finalize the payment, it hasn't gone through, and so you would need to cancel it in the cash payments journal. Funzani's payment for 5,000 Rand was made into the incorrect account. That's another easy error to make. As you're busy saying you're going to pay this person, By accident, you might select the person who's on the beneficiary list underneath them, or you enter the wrong account number when you're busy entering it in the first place. And when that happens, they'll send a proof of payment because they think they've paid the money, and they have. They just haven't paid it to the right person. What happens then is you think you've received it and record it, but in fact, when you look at your bank statement, it's not actually there. Obviously, in both of these cases, 2.2 and 2.3, you would need to have a conversation with those customers to make another plan to receive your money. If the bank statement shows a credit balance of 1,300, obviously that is the beginning of your bank recon statement, exactly like we did in the past. An EFT of 2,700 in the business's favor doesn't yet appear on the bank statement. That could have been a customer who has sent you proof of payment, but perhaps they are from a different bank, and then it wouldn't yet appear on your bank statement if it only happened a day or two ago. So you would need to show that as an outstanding deposit, just like we did in the previous exercises. The following EFT payments don't appear on the bank statement. So now these are payments that we have supposedly set up and we've recorded, but why would they not be on the bank statement? Well, the first one, number 340, is dated the 28th of February for 1,200. That is today's date. It could be that we perhaps recorded it directly after downloading the bank statement. So it's still the same date, but it's not yet shown on the bank statement. We would simply show it as an outstanding payment. If we look at EFT payment 342, dated the 5th of March for 500, obviously the 5th of March hasn't yet come around, but it is in just a few days. We know we are going to honor that payment, so we can simply show it as an outstanding payment. Let's have a look now at how we'll go about correcting errors. Obviously, we are human, and humans can make errors very easily. Often, you will identify that an error has been made by doing the bank reconciliation. And this is one of the important reasons to do a bank recon, because you'll pick up if you've entered an amount incorrectly. It is possible for the bank to make a mistake. However, it is very unlikely. Usually, the banks are pretty accurate. They have got systems that have worked in place for a long, long time. But don't assume that there's never going to be a bank error. I've had in 20 years 2 bank errors where the bank has made a mistake. One of them I had to phone them to correct. The other one they corrected themselves before I even saw it. So it is possible for bank errors to happen. If that does take place, if they haven't already fixed it themselves, you obviously would need to notify the bank. And then you would just enter it in the bank reconciliation statement to say this is what you expect to see on the next bank statement, because you would hope that they would fix it for you ASAP. However, most of the time, the error will be a business error, an error that you have made. That is much more likely. And in this case, you would need to go and correct it either in the cash receipts journal or in the cash payments journal to adjust the amount to what it should actually be. If we look at this example, the bank recon statement included the following: an EFT payment number 428 for 200 Rand. We can't actually do anything with that right now because notice we are sitting at the end of March. So this bank recon statement was for the end of last month. The fact that it shows on the bank recon is saying something was a little bit odd at the end of last month. It wasn't showing. So now we need to check our bank statement and wait to see if it comes up. When we get information about our bank statement in this example, then we'll be able to do a comparison and see what we need to do with that amount. So we're going to leave it alone for now. However, the favorable balance as per bank account at the end of last month would actually be the beginning bank account balance this month. So you can show it here as the beginning calculation of your debit balance as per bank account. Obviously, you don't yet know if it is a debit or not, but you can just put balance as per bank account and show your 287 because we know it's favorable. Now, here we get some information relating to the payment number 428 above. It was as a donation and recorded on the 7th of August, but it was never processed. So maybe we were the ones who were a bit silly and forgot to hit that confirmation button, and the hospice has since closed down. So that means that we don't need to arrange a new payment. We just need to cancel that payment that actually never went through. And so in the cash receipts journal, you can see over here, we cancel it. We just enter a transaction that is exactly the same as the original one. And that's why we will have an entry such as donations in the cash receipts journal. journal. It is unusual. You're not normally going to receive money for a donation, especially as a trading business trying to make a profit. But in this case, you were actually making a donation and you need to reverse that. So you can put it in the CRJ. Notice that I don't have any document number. I can't even say that I saw it on the bank statement because I really didn't. So because there's no document number of any kind, what you need to do is you need to write a little narration, just like you do in the general journal. A story explaining what happened, why are we doing this transaction, just so that anybody looking at it later can actually understand. The bank statement shows a deposit into the business account of $3,000 that Ivalio Georgiev made into his personal account. The bank has been notified of their error. So they simply just confused the name of the business and the name of the owner. And what will have to happen is, because they would have credited the your bank account by accident, they will now need to debit it or subtract the amount from it next month because it didn't relate to your business. An EFT payment issued to Hofmeyer Wholesalers for merchandise was entered in the cash payments journal as 353, but appears on the bank statement as 535. So in this case, what happened was you made a payment for 535, but you entered it incorrectly in your journals. Of course, it might actually be that the payment should only have been for 353 and you pressed the wrong buttons, but the reality is the 535 is the amount that went through. So what you'll need to do is adjust your cash payments journal entry by the difference between those two amounts to make it the correct payment. EFT payment 630 issued to Karaoke Stationers for stationery bought was entered in the CPJ as 722 but appears on the bank statement as 227. A very similar scenario, except that in this case we put an amount that was too much. To reverse it, we are going to need to enter it in the cash receipts journal for the difference. Again, notice that we write a little story to explain what we're doing. And then lastly, the bank statement showed a credit balance of 5,600. So you start the bank recon with that. Even though we've only got this information as a last point, what I would do is I would have just left a space over here as I was working so that I could plop it in at the first line, because that is always a nice place to start. If you forget, it's okay. You can actually put it at the bottom. It will still work out. And then you check your bank recon. If you take your bank account balances from the CRJ and the CPJ, those totals for receipts and payments, you add them to your bank account balance from the beginning of the month, then you can see that it actually does all work out.